everyone. I'm Vivian Wang. I'm a China correspondent with the New York Times, and I'm very excited to be here today with Swe Win, the editor-in-chief of Myanmar Now, for this fireside chat. Swe Win, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Vivian.
So I want to launch right in and talk about your newsroom and how it's possible that you guys are doing the work that you're doing under such difficult conditions with a war going on in your country. You are living in Australia, your staff is in hiding, their operating license has been revoked. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it even means to run a news operation under those circumstances? How do you keep in touch with each other? How do you think about stories? What does a typical day look like, if that even exists?
Yeah, since this is actually, these days are the most challenging days actually for us, not just actually in terms of the logistical difficulties, also spiritual challenges, mental challenges, I would say, because you got to cover the war going on in your country from very afar actually, Our hands are tied actually. And also, things are not that straightforward in every kind of war and clashes. There are contradictories, there are complexities. So, as a reporter, we want to cover all these complexities. So, to us, the truth is actually has different kinds of aspects in every kind of truth. We want to bring in all these complexities. Also tell those stories as readable actually, as lovely pieces of literature actually. So it's very difficult because back in our home country, we have the reporters, but they cannot even go out to the streets with a camera. They cannot even take the risk of taking photos in public. So everything has to be done secretly. Some of our reporters are covering the war in the war zones of the country, our country. So they are also faced with a lot of challenges, security challenges and logistic challenges. There are challenges we cannot fulfill actually. For example, even visit simple internet access, we cannot stay fulfilled. So it is very challenging for us, not just logistically, but also mentally.
Can you talk a little bit more about the mental challenges and how you talk to your staff and how the staff talk among themselves about how to deal with those mental and emotional challenges?
Exactly, yeah. So the mental toll is so huge actually. So in times of war, in times of even natural disaster, even though we are journalists, we feel like giving up our equipment and or whatever we hold in our hand, and we want to go to the rescue of those people who are in need of the help. You are caught at actually, between various kinds of dilemma. We are hearing the pain, the tragedy on a daily basis, and that we feel very useless actually. The media has been disregarded in many places throughout Asia and also across the world. We've been disregarded, but sometimes we feel a bit elated. We feel proud of our work when we see the impact of our stories. But in a country like ours, no matter how much we write, it seems to generate little or no impact to the suffering of the people that we write about. So we feel very much actually devastated. I would say actually depressed and devastated. But we have gradually come to terms with this situation. It's a part of life. There are things actually we cannot avoid actually. So we got to focus on what we are supposed to do it in a proper and also truthful manner. There should be no excuse actually for for reckless reporting, for irresponsible reporting, because reckless reporting can take place in a scenario where there are where there is no proper jurisdiction or no rule of law. You report for another ground or for a side. There are no codes actually. Nobody can find charges against you. Nobody can make a press statement against your one-sided accusations. And then, so there is a temptation sometimes actually, just because of the reporting challenges and also just because of the legal loopholes generated by the murky political scenario, we tend to actually care about potential lawsuits. So we have to be very mindful of that. So what we have to do is do our work, not the best actually, in a responsible manner, and also just focus on the realities, even the small realities actually. Just focus on the small realities actually, we have actually, and then do the proper work actually. I think that's the best service actually, that's the service, because there are many controversies, there are many inaccuracies actually, in a market political scenarios. So the best thing you can give to the people is correct information. So I think that is the best thing actually, if it is possible actually, like what happened to George Orwell. He took up arms actually, in the Spanish War actually. He continued writing actually essays actually, at the same time fighting actually, So there are individuals actually, even in my team, who left our job. They want to play the dual role of being a fighter and also being a reporter actually, Personally, I feel like encouraging them, but we have to set their boundaries actually, so that we can protect our own small professional space.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask. I mean, reading through your coverage from the past 2 years, I was struck by, despite the fact that the reporting conditions are so difficult, there's a lot of journalistic rigor. So, for example, in a piece about a massacre by the sort of Ogre column in March, you mentioned very clearly, these are the allegations that we as a news organization were able to verify, and these others we were not able to verify. And so can you talk a little bit about the standards that you guys use in making sure that you're upholding journalistic standards even under these almost impossible conditions?
Yes, the most difficult thing is you have very limited number of sources when it comes to reporting, what's happening in my country. So mostly actually the sources belong to the unresistant groups fighting against the regime. So very few local actually would take the risk of speaking to media outlets like ours, which have been outlawed actually by the military regime. So we have to rely on different kinds of unresistant groups, even though they seem to belong to the same movement, to the same side, one single side fighting against the junta. But we have to utilize actually, the diversity actually. They are diversity. They are diversity in numbers actually. Different groups talk or give us different information actually. So one could think one strategy we use is the diversification of the sources. So the sources may belong to the same side, but we're trying to use as diverse sources as possible. That's one kind of diversification. We also trying to reach out to other sources which do not belong to the unresistant groups, like the normal villagers, for example. And also trying to talk someone actually who know, but who don't want to go on the record. It's all right actually. We have to give assurance to all the sources that we don't use that, as the official sources, but as part of the background info. Sometimes we don't use their interviews at all. We just try to verify the information as much as possible. So to be sure, the diversification of sources in various ways is the key actually to covering a complex situation or a war like ours.
Yeah. And speaking of, having to rely on the armed resistance groups as major sources, it's also very striking from reading your coverage that as much as you cover atrocities and killings committed by the military, you also have held those groups to account. For example, the story about a monk who was fighting with the resistance forces but has ordered killings of civilians, and about drone strikes by resistance forces that have killed children. And at the bottom of your website, very clearly, there's a statement, a mission statement that says that you eschew false equivalence and bogus notions of balance. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how you balance these two very difficult or very important, but potentially in some people's eyes, conflicting goals of not doing a sort of a false both sides equivalence, but also making sure that you are being objective and telling the whole story of this war?
Exactly. But so we've been covering also the dark stories actually, the dark side of the unresistant movement. To me, actually, anyone who falls victim to injustice is worthy of reporting. They are worthy of public sympathy, actually. So, for example, just very recently, actually, a military captain belonging to the junta, he was going back home from the border area to his hometown, actually. So on the way, he was arrested. He was traveling in plain clothes, disguising himself as a normal civilian. He was arrested, and then he was executed. He was executed. I felt very deeply actually about his story. He he's a military captain actually on duty for an artillery unit. No matter which section of the army he was serving. I feel that once somebody has been arrested, he deserves all the full justice. Sometimes there are executions conducted by the armed forces based on the accusations that these individuals were spies. They sided with the unresistant forces just to steal the information. So some members of the unresistant forces were also executed. We don't know what's the true story, but to us, anyone who got executed, you know, they are the victims actually of injustice. So the military is committing crimes actually against humanity, I would say actually. So anyone actually who falls victim to injustice, to me actually, they should have a voice, or at least actually, they should deserve a stories actually, in our reporting. So I feel, I feel very very strongly, about anyone who gets tortured. I told one of our sources actually is responsible actually for an group. I told him that if you torture an alleged spy, I feel very painful. It doesn't mean that I am being pro-military junta. No, actually, any word about torture should motivate all journalists, all decent human beings, to do something, to speak out. It is unacceptable actually, if somebody does not get killed in the active military action actually in the front line or anywhere actually, that's a different story. Otherwise actually, we should feel sorry about the lives of human, about the loss of human lives.
Is it difficult to have those conversations with your sources or even with your staff? I mean, it's one thing to have this principle, but we're all human. I can understand that people would get emotional. Like you said, people have their sympathies. What do those conversations look like?
Yeah, some of the sources actually, sometimes they are under the impression that we have become correct. We've been bribed by the military junta, bought off by the military junta. So we feel sorry, but we easily get over actually, all these difficult situations. Sometimes actually, I find it difficult actually to talk with. Sometimes, with some people actually, in our media sector as well actually. To me actually, I've been to jail actually, as a young political prisoner. I've been tortured, I've been starved. So I don't want anybody actually, to suffer in a similar way actually. We feel very painful when the Russian fire, indiscriminately fire missiles to the civilian targets. But at the same time, we also feel, in a similar way when some members of, detained Russian troops were executed by Ukrainian, etc. Actually, to me, actually, different entities, might be our characters in our story, but it's the same story. Somebody gets tortured, somebody gets mistreated. It is unacceptable. No matter who are the victims, no matter they are Chinese or Americans or Indians or Burmese against Burmese or Chinese against, it doesn't make any difference. Somebody gets tortured. So it seems that we journalists actually, in the 21st century, being pushed to the margin of the society much more and more actually, So, but I think, we should not give up actually, we can stay actually, write about these stories actually, in a proper way actually, but I don't think that we should lose sight of the universal journalism principles such as accuracies, balance, and also comprehensiveness of our reporting actually. Sometimes the stories can be accurate, seems to have sort of a balance, but if it is not put in a proper context actually, that can be actually, that can, I think, a bit unfair actually, So that's sort of the actually, So we have giant social media platforms actually, everywhere. And then people think journalism is no more, is gone, But, we have these principles actually on our side. So these are our protectors actually, our great friends, As long as we have these friends with us, we will continue to serve the humanity, no matter how small it is, no matter how small that community is.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about sort of how journalism as a field, as a practice, is viewed among the Burmese public. And I know it's really hard to generalize, but I saw that in interviews before the coup, you had described that many people saw journalism as either, important to protect national security or that its purpose was to protect the ethnic or religious majority. Do you think that that view has changed in the past 2 years?
Yes, to some extent, when we have this limited period of democratization from 2010 to 2021, right until the coup, there is some sort of acceptance in the public about the independent rule of the journalism to some extent. But sometimes people see that if we are Buddhist journalists, if the if majority of the newsroom is Buddhist, we are supposed to be protecting actually, Buddhism, that sort of thing actually. So that's why we have a lot of challenges in our coverage of the Rohingya genocide, in the west of our country actually, and also sometimes the people outside our country, particularly, our fellow foreign journalists, might not have a proper understanding of the predicament we were caught at in. We write about something, but very close family members might complain. Not ordinary complaint actually. The kind of complaint that can break up your household. Your neighbor maybe itching to hit you with an axe, with a hammer. And then there is no proper law actually to protect you. Even the law enforcement authorities have the same view that we should not write about this kind of topics, etc. You don't have much choice actually, and then we have to devise our own strategies. If you cannot write about actually the atrocities against the Rohingya Muslims being committed by the military junta, then we should write about whatever other crimes being committed by the same junta. We have to give the pressure. For example, if they are promoting the Buddhist nationalism, we have to write about, this poisonous thesis Buddhist nationalism. But we cannot write about the Rohingya atrocities, So we have to find other alternatives actually, But some of our fellow journalists might understand that, we are not writing about the Rohingyas. We are, we belong to the Buddhist majority, so we are being impartial. But they cannot see. So sometimes I feel that, there must have been a number of professional journalists and writers actually, in Berlin or Hamburg or anywhere, in Germany under the Nazi Hitler, who feel very sympathetic about the plight of the Jews actually, What were they trying to do? You cannot blame them actually. Definitely, there must have been German journalists who were supporting the Nazi regime actually, Nazi ideology. The same actually is in our country actually, who were supporting actually, who were using journalism to promote actually the ultra-nationalist movement. But there are always, a group of people who completely have different opinion. How were they struggling? I try to research actually about these journalists, German journalists, who were sympathetic about the Holocaust, about the plight of the Jewish people, how they trying to actually, continue their meaningful work under and Hitler actually, so that we can at least copy what they did, that their strategies. I cannot find enough.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the practical work that your staff needs to do on the ground in terms of, you mentioned that some are in war zones. I mean, are they able to travel to meet sources in person? Does a lot of the reporting have to happen over the phone or over the internet? I also know, of course, there are connectivity and internet issues. So can you talk a little bit about just how that work even gets done?
Yes. Yeah. So most of our reporting is being done via internet and phone actually. Sometimes we also meet our sources in person. Our reporters are on the ground. So sometimes these journalists actually, they will be approaching the sources without telling who they are. But we are also not conducting the official interview. We are trying to do recognition on the ground. What kind of sources available? What kind of we are trying to verify some information that for example, our reporters on the ground managed to identify that this is a potential source. This sources might have the information, can have the information, and then without exposing himself, our journalist might pass the contact details of the particular sources to us outside the country, and that we will call the sources, and that it properly identify, explain who we are, and then we will ask them if they can give us an interview or at least share us with the background information, etc. The story is done in a difficult, volatile country like ours. Actually, sometimes seems to contain all the anonymous sources, but our goal is to leave a pathway for the researchers or future historians to trace back the sources of information in our story, and also the origin of the sources. At least, for example, this is the anonymous source, but in which neighborhood? What's the name of the neighborhood? So the age of the source, actually. What is his profession? For example, he can be a school teacher in a particular neighborhood, etc. Give us this information. So I think the stories might contain all the anonymous sources, but if the future historian, future means not 100 years actually, later from now, maybe even 5 years from now, or 2 years from now, 20 years from now, if these researchers cannot trace back, cannot find clues actually, in our story for further information, then I think the story is very dangerous, I think, in terms of the accuracy. So that's how we do. That's our baseline actually, the story must be traceable. So to achieve that objective actually, we use a combination of manpower on the ground and also outside the country. But I think we need to actually increase their capacity. For example, if they use a dash cam, we need to have the capacity for them to be able to live stream whatever footage they are gathering to a server outside Myanmar actually. For example, if they have very powerful camera lens, or the kind of cameras, for example, you can shoot at night actually, like thermal lens, etc. So we need a bit of technology actually, even if we have many, just because of our political situation. It's very difficult actually, to purchase or to transport these materials.
Yeah. And like you said, even if you have the cameras, you can't necessarily be seen out in public with them.
Sure.
And so the last question I want to ask, you touched on this a little bit, but, press freedom deteriorating around the world. I'm sitting here in Beijing. These awards are going to be held in Hong Kong, both places that we've seen troubles for journalists. And I'm wondering just what advice you would have, not only for people who are wondering how they do their job under these difficult circumstances, but also, like you said, even if we do our jobs, we might wonder what difference it makes and if it, causes any change in the places that we're covering. Can you talk a little bit about, you might not have an answer, but how you think about that question?
I see. I understand your question now, actually, So, it's a very interesting question. I think, we want to see the impact, of our stories. If there is no impact, we feel that, there is no point in writing about, this and that issue, actually, I think there needs to be a bit of collaboration, actually, among among the newsrooms, not just for reporting, necessities, but also for publishing strategies. I think, so no, I don't see very much actually, there are journalism groups, who try to publish, a number of investigative stuff simultaneously, so, but that has to, I think that has to be strengthened, or that has to grow. So that's one thing. Also, I think there needs to be better and more systematic collaboration between civil rights groups or human rights groups, or etc., between the newsroom actually, with that actually. Sometimes I feel actually there is a much collaboration. We have our own agenda. There is a mist of trust. We have our own ego actually. They have their own actually, and then we forgot actually. The importance that we have to generate this kind of impact. So that's the thing actually. But to see the impact actually, even this kind of collaboration is not enough. If you don't have a proper system, if we don't have a proper system in place, so the system must work, must be activated actually to produce the impact. If our stories are correct and powerful enough, but if we do not have the proper system, activate, I think, journalism is very important, media is important, but at the same time, I think, but the most important thing is the political system. We are all responsible, for promoting a better political system. I don't just mean, Western democracy or any kind of democracy. I mean the kind of system actually, that delivers justice, and logic actually, sheer logic actually, in the society. Any kind of decent system is needed for meaningful survival of journalism. Otherwise, actually, let's imagine, if all the, big powers are autocratic actually, or rook states actually, well, what do we do actually, So I think, reporting is important, but at the same time, the availability of public information is equally important. Even the Western democracies actually, sometimes they restrict actually the information, not just for their security need actually, just for their own actually agenda, or, limited agenda, etc. actually, without the information for us to analyze, there are many things actually completely unknown to us. We don't even know that we have to report.
Thank you to everybody for joining us for this conversation. And thank you especially to you, Swe Win, for your really great, thoughtful responses. And I wish all the best to you and your staff.
Thank you for having me too. Thank you for everyone at the SUPA for organizing this conversation.